Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Happy Labor Day. Guys, if you are having picnics, barbecues, hanging out with friends or family, or just spending the day watching YouTube and relaxing, I hope that you all have a blessed day, a safe day. Let's not forget really what this day stands for. It really doesn't stand for relaxation. It's actually a celebration to celebrate the men and women who break their ass on a daily basis to make this country what it is. Great. It came about when there was unfair wages and unfair work hours, and the rich white collared people of America were making a huge amount of money off of the working man, the blue collared worker. And little did the white collared people know that the working man, the blue collared people, the folks like all of us, are responsible for the social and economic growth of this country. We are the backbone of this country. So celebrate it and appreciate the appreciation that today is given to you and all of us. Before we get into this upload, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? All right, so today's upload. The gentleman who shared his experience with me had heard Marv's experience. If you hadn't heard Marv's experience, I shared it on Saturday. I interviewed him Friday night and put it on Saturday. He had experiences well in the Army and after. He was stationed up at Fort Wainwright. He was also stationed in Fort Campbell. Multiple encounters at Fort Wainwright and at Campbell. Then got out of the Army, stayed in Fort Campbell region, having experiences there as well. Now, Joel, the gentleman who contacted me last night, had been wanting to share his one experience, but he just never had the drive. He felt the inspiration after hearing Marv's, and he said, I said to myself, after hearing his experience, after listening to him talk about his military career, and I was like, I could tell this guy was just like me, just a regular dude that joined the military. And Joel stayed in longer, but just had that feeling, that connection, the brotherhood, I guess. And so he said the one experience that he said after hearing all of the experiences at Fort Wainwright and Campbell, he said the one that got me though was the one when he was on leave and he was up there with his staff sergeant. And he said the second Marv said I was with my staff sergeant, that's when I knew I had to share. He goes, because if it wasn't for our staff sergeant, we may not have made it out of there. And he just got the inspiration. He's heard multiple encounters, military encounters, but for some reason, Marv's resonated with him. Now, he was stationed in Virginia and at a base called Fort Belvoir, and which he felt it necessary to share exactly what, give a brief synapse of Fort Belvoir. Now, it's not a classified installation, but it is and it isn't. You need DOD. You need to be part of the DOD, other agencies, other commands and units. It's really not a restricted, but it is. And, they have defense logistics, defense acquisition, defense contract audit agency, defense technical information center, United States Army Intelligence and Security Command, United States Army Military Intelligence Readiness Command, Missile Defense Agency, Threat Reduction Agency. So you can already tell, you need some sort of qualifications to be, it's not like walking up, my kid's here, let me in. You got to be kind of somebody to get on this base. And back in 98, he said, I don't know now with the politics of everything, but back then it was kind of hard to get on base if you didn't have the credentials. And so he's on base, he's moving along, learning as much as he can, and kind of bettering himself through his MOS, through other things. And one day they are called to a briefing or whatnot and told, hey, you guys are coming with us, and it's going to be 2 fire squads or fire teams, which makes up 1 squad. There's going to be 9 of us, and we're going to a region in Virginia, just a little bit away, Jordan River tributary in Rappahannock County. It's going to be 8 soldiers, 1 staff sergeant. And at that point, everyone's thinking, oh, this is, going to be some sort of specialized skills training. And he distinctly remembers, because they were kind of excited. One, they're going off base. They're going to be in the woods. That was kind of cool, kind of weird. But, who knows? Because they're kind of in the dark on this. And the staff sergeant is saying a word. He's not saying a word about what exactly they're going to do. And they proceed to get into a transport truck. As they are in the truck, the staff sergeant's talking to them and filling them in on what they are going to be doing. A few of the people had asked, what kind of training is this? And the staff sergeant said, it's not training. He said, we're going to be in these woods near the Jordan River, and we're going to have live rounds. It's important that everyone listen to me and my commands. We are on American soil. We are in the public. But right now we have to find a location. We have to locate a possible crash site. It should be somewhat contained in a very small region in this area. But, for our safety, we are going to have active round, which everyone, I'm not even going to speak for everyone. He and one of his buddies are kind of look at each other. They're sitting side by side. They look at each other like active rounds. And he's thinking to himself, what the hell are we doing? Why are we having active rounds? They proceed to get to the location. They are getting out of the transport truck. They're geared up pretty much for light warfare. And he's thinking to himself, like, what the hell is going on? We're on American soil. And he says this to one of his buddies, that Native American buddy. And he's like, we shouldn't even be out here with live rounds. He's like, what the hell is going on? And his friend looks at him and he's like, I was thinking that myself. He said, that's why I looked at you. They get out into the woods. Staff sergeant, as they're walking to the tributary, the staff sergeant says, fall in formation, V formation. I'll lead the way. 4 men on one side, 4 men on the other. Be in a V pattern. And what are we looking for? When you see it, you will know. It's all he said. When you see it, you will know. And remember, we are in the public right now, technically, even though we are in the woods, but we are on American soil. Do not fire unless I give the command. And at that point, he's walking, staff sergeant's on the lead, and they all kind of look at each other. He said, I remember looking back at everybody too, like, what the hell? I was 2 guys behind staff sergeant. So I had 2 guys behind me. And they all kind of shrug their shoulders and proceed to walk. They've got about a 12-mile hike from the tributary, from one part of the tributary to the other. And it's not a very large area, but it's large enough. And they are probably a half an hour hiking. And for some reason, the staff sergeant is about to say something. And he turns. And when he turns, everyone's in that V formation, so he's facing them. He turns and he looks at them. And Joel said, I remember as he's about to say whatever he was going to say, he said he turned his head and he looked straight down between us all, and his eyes were as big as saucers. He said, I know it's the cliche thing, he said, but they were freaking huge. And he didn't say anything, he didn't move, he didn't budge, he just stood there, and it was just real strange. So we all kind of caught on to it, and as he's staring, we hear this growl behind us. We hear this growl, and it was such a clusterfuck. Exact word, such a clusterfuck, because you have our staff sergeant staring behind us and 8 dudes turning left and right, all with active rounds in their rifles. And, we didn't turn in formation. We just kind of fucking turned every which way we could to get to the location of where our staff sergeant was staring. It was totally unsafe, totally out of formation. And as we did, what we see in front of us is this, it had to have been 6.5 to 7 foot Dogman. He said it was not very tall. He said it was tall, but it was not like, the experiences I hear people tell on your channel and other channels when they're like 8-9 feet. He said this thing was a big dude. He said, tall wise. But when you're looking at this thing, I realized that its shoulders were almost as wide as it was tall. This thing was huge, maybe 4 foot across shoulder wise. And it was a weird shape. It was just like its shoulders cut down. He said, I couldn't see defined musculature. I could see a lot of hair. And what I saw for hair was jet black behind this charcoal gray. Its whole chest and shoulders down to its groin area was this kind of like charcoal gray that stuck out from the back black on it. You know, its upper part of the shoulders, its sides were black, but then you had this really interesting gray color, he said. And I just kind of looked up and down at it. And it is daytime, but the tree canopy, the sun isn't breaking through very much. You know, you can definitely tell it's day, but it's not bright down there. And I thought to myself, this thing's got self-illuminating eyes. And he's like, they were this really bright orange. It was like the brightest orange I've ever seen. And it's staring at us. It's staring at my staff sergeant, actually, is what it's doing. And it lets out another growl. Now, at this point, we are all kind of at the ready because we hear our staff sergeant say, fire at my command. No sooner did his staff sergeant say that, he said the oddest thing, everything felt bizarre. He said, I remember having a conversation. He said, I'm thinking back on things that me and my friend had talked about walking in. And, you know, he said, I remember my buddy saying, the woods are quiet. And it was like, okay. And then I realized, as we are all at this point, he said that because this big thing was out here. Staff sergeant says that, fire on my command, and like 15 seconds later, he said a couple jumped out of trees, landed by him, and some came running up. He said, so you have this huge, just monstrous Dogman standing in front of us. This just charcoal gray, black. And then there's 6 more. 6 more are with it. So you've got 7 Dogmen. Some were kind of scrappy looking. He said there was some that really just looked real rough. Almost like they had mange. You know, you could see skin. There was hair, obviously there was hair, but it was thin. It was thin and patchy on a few of them. There was one that stood kind of directly behind what we'll call Alpha, because that's what he referred to it as, because it was the one obviously in command. There was one that stood directly behind that one, and it was a little taller than the Alpha, but almost the same coloration, just a little lighter. And as we're all staring at these things, probably 30 seconds after they converged on us, we're all, waiting for our fire on command, that we hear 3 bursts, 3 shots just ring out real quick. And we hear a thump. We hear 3 thumps. We hear 3 bursts, 3 thumps, a growl, and we watch the alpha, the main one, kind of drop to its knees. It's then looking back up at us. So this thing's looking up at all of us now, and all of the other ones are staring directly at us. They're growling, and they are making these kind of weird, almost like a language amongst themselves. The growls sounded like dogs, but it sounded like there was some sort of communication in it, he said. And all of a sudden, two of the scrappy ones on the left-hand side came like running up. Not walking, but they were running. He said, I remember at that point, something kicked in, and it was fight or flight, and I just put my feet down hard, and I pulled the trigger. He said, I had one dead to rights. He said, you heard bursts, and you saw the two drop. The one alpha is still staring up at us. These others are growling real freaking loud at us. And I realized that I turned to look back at our staff sergeant quick to see what, because I realized that the shots just came from my line of 4. I didn't have any peripheral. I'm just staring and I kind of turned to look at the other guys on the other side of me. And they're not there. And I turn a little more and my staff sergeant's not there. And the next thing I know, as I'm turning my head, 2 more are coming, running at us, and bursts. As we're shooting those 2, we hear these just screams of, he said, I'll never forget these screams. They were like of terror, pure terror, pain, and whatever. He said, but you could tell there was just absolute terror in those screams. I see the guy who shot the alpha initially. He's being carried away by a Dogman. One of the bigger ones. And screaming. Just, he's gone. He's in the woods, gone. The guy behind him had taken a couple shots. All of a sudden, these 2 are down. You got the alpha, the 2 that are down, and the one that just took off. That leaves the one that was behind the alpha that looked very similar to it, just a little taller and not as wide. And the alpha's staring at us, and that large one's staring at us. And it grabs the alpha, or kind of puts its hand on its back, drops to 4s, and they both run into the woods very quickly. They're just gone into the woods. We turn to look and see where our staff sergeant is, and we see them. They are about 100 yards down this wood trail, because now we can hear shooting behind us. We can hear bursts behind us. I walk up and look to make sure these 4 are dead. One of the 2 that was the last 2 that we had shot was actually still alive. It was still breathing, still moving. And I had put a round into it to dispatch it. He said, and I hope people don't give me ridicule for that. He said, I did it because even though these things wanted to kill us, this thing was suffering. He said, I don't know why. He said, there's a lot that bothered me about that day. He said, I'm surprised I even re-enlisted after this. He said, but I did. And I put it down. We hear the firefight. And we take off running to join our staff sergeant and the other 4. So we're running up to catch up to our staff sergeant and these other 4. We're yelling at the same time because we don't want them to think that we are more of these dogmen and get shot ourselves. And mind you, at this point, he's not calling them dogmen. Now he is calling them dogmen. He didn't know what the fuck they were fighting at this point. We're running up and we're like, it's us, staff sergeant. It's us, da-da-da. They got this guy. And even though his name is not Joel, he still said, if anyone from Bellevue or whatever heard this, they would instantly know what we were talking about. And it would only take 7 people being questioned for it to come out that it was me. Mind you, there was 9 that went there, if that tells you something. So 8 people. He didn't. The one guy that got carried away did not make it. They run up and he's like, I don't even know if our staff sergeant heard us because they're shooting bursts into, there was 4 right there that they were dealing with. We came up and everything, those 4 were down. We tell our staff sergeant that one of our buddies got taken by these things. What the hell's going on? What happened to you guys? And what had happened was, as those 2 were approaching after that burst, one of the guys that was next to the staff sergeant on that line, on the line of 4, heard a growl, turned and looked and saw dogmen coming from the opposite way. They took off and went to face them. So it was a true fight or flight, but there was no flight. They're now kind of standing, trying to figure out what exactly is going on. The staff sergeant is refusing to answer anything. One of the soldiers is like, why are we even out here? What the hell are these things? We're down our buddy, like, what's going on? What are we looking for? And as they are kind of getting questioned or questioning each other, talking, they hear this howl. Sorry, I had to hit pause. The Tigger, the channel mascot, needed to come in. So they hear this howl, and they're about 100 yards from the initial shooting, where the first shooting started, where the first confrontation started. And they all kind of start to look that way because that's where the howl had come from. They had just filled it, the staff sergeant in, hey, the 2, the alpha and the larger one took off running that way. But they didn't run 2-footed. They ran quadruped. And so they're all looking down that way. They can see the bodies, the 4 bodies that are laying at the end of the trail. And they see what look like a group of people start to come out of the woods. Like if I don't know, like just a mob of people just kind of came out of the woods. And initially that's what they're looking, and they're like, kind of like, and then they realize, oh shit, those aren't people. And there's, about 30 of them. And the staff sergeant kind of looks at everyone and he goes, guys, we might not make it out of this one. And they all, he said, put fresh mags in. And they all put fresh magazines in. And they get ready. They get ready to, go to town. They're looking 100 yards. There's 30 dogmen standing, just staring down this trail, looking at them. And the staff sergeant kind of looks around and he says, all right, he said, fall back and we'll hold our ground just beyond those bodies, the 4 or 5 that are behind them. And so they did. They fall back quick and they kind of are ready to go. They hear a howl and they see, probably it was like half the group, it appeared to be half the group just started to run towards them. Some running quadruped, some were running biped. As they are doing that, the Jordan River tributary is right here. As they are doing that, they see this bright sun. It was just like the sun was hit Earth. Mind you, the sun is out, but the canopy is thick where they are. So they're not getting a lot of light, enough light, but anyone that's been hiking knows what I'm talking about. The light that, but this light was radiating and coming from the side of this Jordan River. And it was huge. He said it was like a 50-foot diameter of just light. And the dogmen, we are all kind of stopped and putting our hands to our eyes, looking at it. And he said it's a good goddamn thing that those dogmen stopped, because we were looking at this light trying to figure out what the hell was going on here. And as we did, they had stopped. I looked back at them to see, and they had all stopped. And they're looking at this light as well. And he said, I saw the others run up too. And all 30 of them are staring at this light. And he said, I don't know how to put this to you, Jeff. He said, because one, I don't want people to think that I'm crazy, and I don't want people to think I'm making it up. He said, and that's the biggest reason why I didn't ever share this with anybody. He said, but they're staring at this thing. There's no noise coming from that light. We can hear their growls. We can hear it was a mixture of anger and fear and whatever, and barking. And like 15 to 30 seconds after that light just appears, it goes black. Everything was black where it was that bright sun-colored yellow light. Just black. It looked like a big doorway. He said, this humanoid whatever, he said, came walking out of that hole in wherever it was. It looked like if there was a door in your house and someone walked through it. But it was not a human. He said the only thing that looked remotely human was that it was bipedal. It had arms. It had a head. And as it came out of that portal, I'm looking at it and I see that it's maybe 15. It's no taller than 20 feet. Maybe 15 to 18 feet. It's got a kind of a small tail coming off of it and what looked like wings. And it was this greenish gray color. And I said small tail. You know, I the second I heard tail, I'm like, tail? And he said it was small, meaning like it didn't touch the ground. And it was probably, if this thing was 15 to 20 feet in height, it would have been maybe 5 feet long, not touching the ground. And it appeared to, you know, be a solid kind of almost like some sort of whatever lizard tail, reptilian. And he said the wings, you could see these wings. We can't see anything of its front. We're seeing the backside and peripheral of it. And it's looking at these dogmen. And they're still growling at it and making noises. And I remember my staff sergeant saying, "Hold your fire." But it was quiet. He said it was like no louder than "hold your fire." Like just in a basic talk, not a yell, not trying to yell over the growls and stuff that we're hearing, which was real strange. The thing, it must have hurt him. He said, I barely heard him, but it was loud enough to where I did. But he said that thing was 100 yards from us, and it turned its head and looked at us, and its face was so bizarre and terrifying. He said it was the same color as its body. Its eyes were this yellowish color, this really bright yellow. He said, I didn't see any pupils or anything. He just said, I remember this glow. And there was a glow because that black void was still behind it. So it was like almost like working off of that. Its teeth were so weird. He said it had this kind of like a reptilian muzzle. Not like a dog muzzle, not like a mammalian muzzle, but like a reptilian kind of muzzle. And its teeth were sticking out, up, down, and very strange. Not in order. Not like a canine's teeth, or any other kind of mammalian. These were just kind of sticking out at random spots. So a tooth would, one tooth is sticking to the left, the one next to it to the left, the one next to it to the right, to the left, just like this mix match of teeth. And he said there was way too many of them. And as it caught our sight and saw us, its mouth was closed, but these teeth were sticking out. It opened its mouth and it made this god-awful noise that did not seem like it would come from that creature. You think of that creature being so big and so demonic looking that it would have this just loud baseful roar or whatever. It sounded like a atypical screech, loud, long screech, almost like it was breathing in and making a noise. And at the end, it just stopped. It cut it off. It was not like a woman screaming, not like someone dying screaming. It was the oddest and most horrific noise. And he said, I tried to mimic it before. And he said, the best way I could would be as I'm sucking air into my lungs and making a noise at the same time. That's the best way to describe it. And it does that weird noise, and we all back away from it. Now we're backing up, not taking our eyes off this goddamn thing. And it turns its head back to the Dogman. And it just started to flail at them. Like its arms were so long and so muscular. Its hands were just as big as stop signs, maybe bigger, with just claws. Not like the Dogman claws. He said they weren't long. He said, but this thing had claws, because when it was going at these Dogmen, you could literally see them get sliced open and tore up. Dogmen are jumping at it. Some are running away, howling. And it grabs like 3 or 4 with it. And it threw them into that hole, into the void. And it grabbed them and threw them. And it stood there because you've got dead Dogmen at its feet, Dogmen running the opposite direction, and us standing there staring at it. And we had our guns trained on this thing. And it turned and looked at us and did that noise again. But when it did it, it raised its arms up in the air and kind of arched its back, staring at us still. Made that god-awful noise, turned around and walked into that black void that was at one point this burst of yellow. So it had done that just strange kind of arced its back as it's facing them. It had turned, and he believes that a few of those Dogmen that were thrown into that void were still alive, because he swears that as that thing turned to walk in to that void, that whatever you want to call it, portal void, because it was just jet black, he thought he saw one of those Dogmen trying to crawl out of that void. And it just kind of, what he thinks, he doesn't know for sure, it's just the way its foot moved. But then what happened, everyone saw 2 people beside him had the same sighting, but they all saw it walk into this void, or go into the void. It unfurled its wings, and they were just huge. He said they were wider wingspan than this thing was as tall. And everyone beside him and 2 others saw the same thing. It walked into the void, kicking this Dogman back into the void. And he saw it unfurl its wings like everyone else, but then cast itself in. Like almost walk in and then just flap its wing and gone into the void. The void starts to close, this jet black hole, and there's a ripple of that goldish yellow around the void as it's shrinking. And everyone's standing there like, what did we just witness? There is 5 dead dogmen in front of them. They look down, they can see the 4 that Joel and his fire team had taken out. And then you just see this bits and pieces of dogmen laying before that void opened. 10, maybe 15, he doesn't remember, but he said there was at least 20 dead dogmen right there between us and that creature. And that creature just did the confrontation with just slicing with its hands. They then, Staff Sergeant looks at him and we got to get out of here. But getting out at that point would be hiking back out of there the same way they had just come in. They're going to have to go past the bodies that fire team killed, the bodies that whatever that creature was killed, and then the other 4 in there in the very beginning. Plus, wherever the rest of the dogmen had gone, plus they got to walk by that void. They decide to walk the opposite direction and radio to base stating that they need an immediate pickup. They'd lost one guy. They were told to bring him home. It almost felt like everyone that went there was expendable, even the staff sergeant. Because he said, you got to get us out of here. What are you talking about? We can come back later to get the body. But you expect us to, obviously we weren't here. That's what they do. They proceed to walk out and they follow this blood trail. They find the soldier who did the initial 3 bursts, and he looked at peace. He was laid on the ground. His arms were to his side and just there. And it was weird because if on all of the experiences Joel has heard and myself, because I was like, dude, that's weird. Getting attacked by these creatures or whatever, the dogman, this creature, I think that could have been a dogman or Ratham or Achim, a variant or a descendant of the Nephilim, or an Anakim, some sort of reptilian. Now, Anunnaki people say the Anunnaki were reptilian with wings, Draco, the fallen angels. Some Nephilim supposedly had wings. They end up finding the soldier. He is placed, the way his body was placed was not as if one of these dogmen had torn him up. He was killed by something, by the dogman, obviously. It carried him away. But he said and we all thought it was weird because it looked like his body had been placed, his hands were by his side. He was just almost looked peaceful. We grabbed him, we carried him out, and we then proceeded to go back to Bellevue, where we were all questioned beyond belief. There were some of the people questioning us were military. Others were definitely not military. He had a year to re-enlist. He re-enlisted after that, a year after this happened, which bothered him too. You know, he's like, I don't know why I re-enlisted. I can't come up with why I re-enlisted. He goes, it just doesn't make any sense to me. With everything that went down, with all of just the secrecy and hypocrisy of what happened, he goes, we never got any answers on what that creature was. They never told us that these dogmen creatures, what were we going there for? We have no idea why we were even there. So after which, he re-enlists. He's mentally dealing with all of this, getting out of the military and such. But he starts to go down his own rabbit holes. He starts to think about all this. Very intelligent guy. And for anonymity reasons, I'm not going to go into any more of what he did during the rest of his time in the military. But I will tell you that he did share some pretty interesting information that he had obtained from people he met at Fort Belvoir on Dulce, which I'll share that in a different upload. I'm going to do an upload on Dulce, some of that information that he shared with me. But here's the thing. And he said, I don't know if this had anything to do with it or not. He said, but think about this. Dogmen, a huge pack of dogmen, are right in that vicinity. For what reason? Who knows? He said, from all the experiences I've ever heard, he said, that's a rarity. He said, then right on the side of the tributary, this golden portal opens up and then turns jet black, and this monster of a creature comes out that looks nothing like anything existing on this planet. A biblical demon. Next to the Jordan River tributary. What happened at the Jordan River? The Jordan River primarily refers to a significant geographic and spiritual site where Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, and Joshua led the Israelites into the Promised Land. The river is a reoccurring symbol of transition, purification, divine promise throughout the Old and New Testaments. Even though that is the Middle Eastern Jordan River, but does that biblically line up with anything? I'm like, that's an interesting look, I never would have thought anything like that. I mean, you're in freaking Rappahannock, Virginia, in this really rural area. And he's like, there had to have been a reason why they sent us out there with live ammunition. What were we looking for? Were we there to locate this portal? Were we there to locate this Dogman pack? Did they know that this shit was out there? Because we didn't find any crash site. Granted, we didn't we didn't finish our, skill set training mission, whatever you want to call it. We didn't finish that, but we didn't come upon any crash site the whole time we were there. We probably had half the walk down, but you think it would have been somewhere in that area. And I'm like, dude, that's pretty intense. That's pretty intense. I never would have put a biblical connection, but he did. Which was pretty interesting, when I started this channel, and before that, because I've been researching since 1994, since I had my Dogman encounter, not as much as I do now, but I mean, I have an extensive book collection that there are books that I've had for years because of my, before my YouTube channel, before anything. I didn't believe there was a biblical connection to these creatures. I thought, one, they were either coming from another dimension or they were flesh and blood. I believe some are flesh and blood. I believe some are dimensional. That dimension possibly being hell. The information he shared with me about Dulce, put it this way. Nightmare Hall, level 6, absolutely terrifying. I've done uploads about Nightmare Hall in Dulce. I'm obsessed with that area. I'm obsessed with New Mexico. Level 7, hell on earth. Hell on earth. And I'll share that information in the next couple of days with you guys. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.